Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
Let's go ahead and move on to the New Orleans Pelicans and Zion Williamson. A couple of weeks ago, Zion Williamson got diagnosed with I believe he re-aggravated his injury, his hamstring injury. So he's going to be sidelined for a couple more weeks, which means that his timeline and his estimated timetable for return is towards the end of the season, like in beginning of April. With Zion Williamson, signing that 5-year, $193 million extension, not having, played a lot of games for the New Orleans Pelicans. If you were the New Orleans Pelicans franchise, what would you do with Zion Williamson?
The issue is there's just a lack of continuity. It's similar to like the situation with the Clippers and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, where every single year we're expecting these two to be healthy, and ironically, this year again, with Paul George getting injured and potential. Of course, everybody's glad that it's not a serious injury to the point where his season is completely done, but it is looking like he will be coming back possibly towards the beginning of a playoff series. Who knows? But it's the same issue with the Clippers that exists there, where your two stars can never be on the floor at the same time for an extended period of time, and that causes an issue for a team because you're unable to build any sort of chemistry with the rest of the roster. You're unable to build some sort of winning formula. We saw how good Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson were together. At one point, these guys were the number one seed, and then Zion gets injured, and then Brandon Ingram picks up a toe injury, and next thing you know, both of your stars are missing games, and so it comes down to a point where do we value? It's not even Zion constantly being injured. It's the fact that at a young age he's picking up this amount of injuries. He's not even like an aging veteran. He's not like a guy like a Kawhi or a Paul George where they're 30 plus and they have years under their belt. This guy's only been in the league for a couple years. I think he's averaging 20 games a season or something like that, which is just downright ridiculous since he's been in the league. So if I'm the Pelicans, I really think about trading Zion in the offseason. I understand this guy is a ridiculous talent. He's going to be an offensive engine for years to come, but is it worth constantly hoping him to be that player and worrying about whether or not he's going to be injured every season? Nothing has pointed towards the fact that he's going to remain healthy. There's no evidence to suggest that Zion is going to be a healthy basketball player. Of course, you love the upside that exists with him. He's going to absolutely be a top 5 player if he's healthy, but that question of if always looms around with him. So if I'm the Pelicans, I really consider trading him for a haul in the offseason. Get a return and build around build around Brandon Ingram and bring in more basketball players, because availability is the best ability. And if Zion isn't available, then what can you do? Are you really going to win playoff series with CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram? That's it. So that's just my opinion.
Man, for me, I feel like they got to give Zion just another year to see if he can stay healthy. I mean, like, coming into this year, we see what type of player he is. We see what he does when he's on the court. We see how he plays. They had Pelicans were number one with him, Brandon Ingram healthy. CJ McCollum was part of it. That offense was flowing. But, looking at his injury history, a lot has to do with his legs, hamstring, knee, foot, hip, It's a lot of it to do with his legs. And I don't know, man. For me, I feel like it's the style of play that he plays as, how heavy he is when he comes to the court, how, not aggressive, but like the athleticism, the way he lands on his foot after dunking and stuff like that. That, causes injuries, For him, I feel like the Pelicans in a way, they do have a team, they do have the pieces to, make a good playoff push, but I feel like one more year, they give that Zion one more year to stay healthy. And if he can stay healthy, just, push along. You pay the guy 5 years, you picked the number 1 overall pick. I'm not gonna give up on a guy after 2 to 3 years on my team. I'm not gonna give up on him yet. The way he can play, if he gets a full season, not even a full season, if he can get 70 games under his belt, who knows what he could do. But hey, injuries, man, for him, it's every year, he comes in, plays 23 games, 24 games, and bam, he gets hit with a heavy injury. He's out 3-4 months. And then next year it's the same thing. And then next year it's the same thing. So hopefully, man, I wouldn't, if I'm the Pelicans GM, I'm gonna give this try another one. Hopefully he can stay healthy. But we know teams will come out and take Zion if they want it in the trade. There's a lot of pieces that people will move for Zion, you know, a lot of draft capital, a lot of young players, a lot of players that can be involved in the trade for Zion. So if they do go that route and they want to, you know, get pieces to pair with Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum and build around those two, they can. But at the same time, if you can get Zion to stay healthy, you got one of the best players in the league.
I mean, the way I look at this whole situation with the Pelicans, I just feel like they're in a situation where the Pelicans are pretty much stuck. They really have no wiggle room in this whole thing. The idea of, you know, Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, you know, as a duo in the Western Conference is amazing when you think about it and when you look at it on paper. But the reality of it's Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram have only played 93 basketball games together in the span of 4 years. So, you know, and Zion Williamson has been in the league for 4 years now. We all know the contract extension that the Pelicans gave him, that 5-year, $194 million deal in the offseason. With him not even playing a game on that roster, on that contract. And, you know, with the Pelicans right now sitting, I believe they're 9th right now, but a couple of days ago, they were the 11th seed out on the outside looking in. You know, the franchise, their playoff hopes and their NBA championship aspirations, you know, they fall on his shoulders. And Zion's always had this weight issue, and, you know, the playing weight since his college days. He came out of, you know, Duke, and, you know, people were really concerned with him coming into the league at 280. You know, people were saying things like, you know, his knees aren't going to be able to hold up and he's not going to be able to last long in this league. But, you know, the thing is, nobody denies Zion's talent. It's just the injury history that kind of comes with it. You know, these last 4 years for Zion to only be averaging 28 and a half games, you know, in the NBA, it's a bit ridiculous. You know, obviously when he's out there on the floor for the Pelicans, these guys are one of the best teams in the Western Conference. These guys were sitting at the 1 seed in early December, and Brandon Ingram wasn't really playing much throughout in the beginning of the year, but Zion Williamson and CJ McCollum were doing the heavy lifting, especially Zion. I think he was one of, you know, a tear of games where he was averaging, you know, about 28 plus and 8 plus rebounds. So shooting about 60%, which he's, you know, always going to be shooting around. But right now, I think the New Orleans Pelicans, I wouldn't necessarily trade Zion Williamson, but it's something that they definitely have to, you know, keep their eye out on. I would give this I wouldn't give it only a year. I would give it 2 because of that huge contract that they just gave him, and he hasn't even played a single game on that contract. That contract doesn't kick in until next year. But, you know, right now the Pelicans are in prime position to make the playoffs if these guys are just able to, or make the play-in tournament if these guys are just able to, you know, win a couple of these games that are left on the schedule, these last 7 to 8 games. And Zion Williamson is due to come back, you know, towards the playoffs. So I believe, you know, if the Pelicans are able to get Zion back, these guys are going to, you know, be a lock for the playoffs, to be honest, because with the way these guys are playing, you know, when Zion Williamson was healthy, these guys were, you know, they were sitting at like top 4 seed, you know, in early January when he got injured. So the Pelicans, you know, like I said, but then being stuck with Zion Williamson, I would give it some time. You know, obviously Zion Williamson is going to be the topic of discussion when we talk about, you know, the Pelicans and in his injury history. But I feel like Brandon Ingram, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, not being able to take that step forward as, you know, as a true superstar in this league, is something that the Pelicans do have to keep their eye out on. But at the end of the day, Brandon Ingram is out there playing and Zion Williamson is not. And of course, Brandon Ingram has been in the league for quite some time now. Zion only averaging 28 and a half games in 4 years. And you just gave him that max contract. Of course, we all know where the eyes are going to be looking at, and that's going to be at Zion Williamson. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Pelicans finish out this you know, the rest of the season right now, and if they're able to make the play-in tournament, and then once Zion comes back, if these guys are able to clinch a playoff spot, and we'll talk about how deadly of a playoff team they'll be with him in the lineup. But like Abdi said, you know, as always, the best ability is availability, and right now Zion Williamson hasn't really been available for the New Orleans Pelicans.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.